Hello guys, how are you? The topic of today which we are discussing is perspective on personality psychodynamic approach. As you know, in the previous lectures we have seen that there are various approaches to explain personality, psychology. We have talked about behavioral approach, we have talked about humanistic approach, we have talked about biological approach, we have talked about the cognitive approach and so many approaches. Now, this particular approach psychodynamic has a very important and significant role in the field of personality, because the propounder of its technique, the school, we consider him as one of our fathers of psychology, and on this basis a particular therapy is based, which we will talk about, that how does it play, how we perform the therapy, what are the assumptions, etc., etc. So, first let us talk about that what is psychodynamic approach. So, today we will talk about perspective on personality psychodynamic. There are various perspectives on personality like psychodynamics, behavioral perspective, cognitive perspective and biological perspective. These perspectives led to the psychotherapeutic techniques. As I told you earlier, by perspective we mean that what are the what are the thoughts, what's the thinking about the behavior, how the psychologists are thinking, and on the basis of their approach they derive a type of the therapy. So, that is why I said these perspectives led to psychotherapeutic techniques. And what is psychotherapeutic? The word therapy means treatment and psycho means psychological. If I am giving treatment by psychological technique, that becomes psychotherapy. I am giving treatment by drugs, that is called drug therapy. You might have seen in the movies, you might have read in psychology, ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. Therapy means treatment by what? By creating convulsions by electrical shock, that became ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. So, similarly the word psychotherapeutic means the treatment by psychological methods, assumptions. Psychoanalysis emerged from psychodynamic technique. So, one of the very important, everybody has heard, you might also have heard the word psychoanalysis. This therapy has emerged from the psychodynamic technique or the psychodynamic tradition, or I may say psychodynamic school of the psychology. Behavioral therapy and cognitive therapy emerged from behavioral and cognitive perspectives respectively. I told you in one of my lectures about the behavioral approach. They say that we learn from the environment. If I can learn from the environment, then I can do the unlearning also. Nothing is involved. They say we learn the bad habits, good habits from the environment. So, by applying different techniques, token economy, systematic desensitization, aversive therapy, assertive therapy, by these techniques I will use the treatment based on the behavioral approach, and that becomes called as the behavior therapy. Similarly, on the basis of the cognitive school, we have the cognitive therapy. Now, this topic is related about the psychodynamic approach and the psychoanalysis. Psychodynamic perspective has a very strong impact in understanding personality. Sigmund Freud propounded the concept of psychodynamics and personality, which has a great impact on psychology. As I told you that we consider him as one of the fathers of psychology. His work was, sometimes we say, the first revolution, because he told us about the type the mind's conscious. We will talk about it in details, because earlier we were thinking that whatever the problems we have, that is because of the supernatural powers, because of the ghost, witches, etc. That is why you might have seen in the old movies or in the old traditions, you go to the villages, the mental patients are, they are chained. Some, typical material is given, and that creates typical sensation, and they start, the person who is treating will start beating or doing something activity with the patient, and the patient will say, now I am okay. This was a tradition when no scientific attitudes were developed about the psychology, but when Freud came, he gave us a scientific vision to think about the psychology, to think about the psychopathology. That is why the persons who have some problems we used to call lunatic. What is lunatic? Luna is the goddess of moon, and we say as the moon is of the full size, the Purnima, then there will be more psychopathologic cases, and moon recedes, the psychopathology will reduce. That means we believed in the supernatural powers, but this psychodynamic approach brought the scientific vision, scientific attitude to understand the personality. So, that is why I said it has a great impact on us. Now, what is the Freud's conception of personality? It is hard to understand how developed his idea about personality unless we have some knowledge of the world in which he and his patient lived. We can very easily talk from the state of the mind, but you know how these thoughts came in his mind, how this school emerged. To understand it, we must understand in brief that in which era he was living and what were the thoughts at that time. Sigmund Freud, he was born in 1856 and raised in Europe during the Victorian age, a time of sexual repression. Repression means we were not allowed to express our feelings. We were repressed. During the Victorian period, a time of sexual repression. People growing up in this period were told by their church that sex should take place only in the context of marriage and only to make babies. To enjoy sexual intercourse was considered as a sin. Women, especially those of the upper classes, were not supposed to have the sexual urges, because at that time, what was the dominating at that era? Church. Whatever the priests were telling the public, that was the last words, and we have to follow. They said that the sex is only for, giving birth to the child. It has no relation with the sexual enjoyment, no pleasure, nothing doing. So they said it is a sin. You have sex only to born a child. And the persons, the women who belong to a very luxurious family, the high family, the upper socio-economic status, they shouldn't have any sexual urges. If you see in the motivation lectures, we have explained that sex is one of the primary biological need of the person. And if it is a primary need, that means it is as necessary for our survival, and it is generated by our hormones. So it is a biological need, and if it is a biological need, how we can repress? Can you repress your hunger? Can you repress your thirst? Can you repress the sleep? No, because they are the primary and biological need. So similarly, the sex was a biological need, but we are talking about at the time when Freud was brought up. So at that time it was considered as a repressed. So what Freud observed, Freud was a very renowned psychiatrist, physician. So many of his patients were ladies from the wealthy families. So he observed that their problem was the repression of the sexual desire. Church was not permitting, but it was the biological phenomenon. So it was repressed by those women, and this repression started creating psychological problem. Freud came to believe that there were layers of consciousness in mind. His belief in the influence of unconscious mind on conscious behavior, published in The Psychopathology of Everyday Life, shocked the Victorian world. Freud said that whatever is in our unconscious mind, we will talk about what is the unconscious mind, it has impact on the conscious mind. Now, how does it influences or impact on the conscious mind? He wrote a book, and the name of the book was The Psychopathology of Everyday Life. And when this book came in the market, it shocked the Victorian world, because they were thinking sex, they were trying to repress the sex, but when this book came and openly discussed the type of the minds, there was I can say there was a revolution in the thinking of the people. I just tell you that if you go to the library, you will find books written by Freud, more than 100, meaning of jokes, unconscious mind, interpretation of dreams, what not. That is why he's a very, very big guy, and we consider him one of the fathers of psychology. Now, what he said? Freud believed that mind was divided in 3 layers. He says there are 3 types of the mind: preconscious mind, conscious mind, and the unconscious. He says the minds are 3 types: conscious, preconscious, and the unconscious. Now, what is conscious mind? Conscious mind is that part of the mind in which current awareness, memorable, positive events of the life exist. It is the mind where you put the memorable events of your life. You got gold medal, you were first in some competition, you got first prize, your papa gave you the very valuable first, valuable means anything which you like, maybe a toffee to you as a gift. That is the day my papa gave me for the first time. My mama, my papa hugged me for the first time. I went to the interview for the first time, and I remember that I was selected. It is, you are aware, it is a memorable. I am a teacher, my students, are on the different higher posts. Even I have told you in my earlier lectures, perhaps also, one of my student is, minister in the Honorable Narendra Modi's Prime Minister's cabinet, Shri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat. He is my student. So, when I remember him, I feel proud. It is a memorable event that one of my students is in such high position. So, it is my conscious mind. Preconscious, it is also called subconscious. It contains memories, information, and events of which one can easily become aware of. It is not in your memory, you are not aware of, but if you put certain efforts, it can come into your memory, it can come into your conscious level. Now, one of my student who didn't get any higher position, I was just he was my student, and he left the university, and after 10 years, 15 years, he meets me in the market or in the train, and he said, "Sir, you are my teacher, you taught me in MA psychology. Sir, do you remember my name?" Then I just put some effort on my mind. I said, "Oh, you are Mr. Such and Such." Now, his name is is not in my conscious, but when I put certain efforts, it came in my conscious mind. This mind is called as the subconscious mind. The third is unconscious mind. Beneath the preconscious mind is the unconscious mind, which contains thoughts, desires, and impulses of which we remain largely unaware. Although some of this material has always been unconscious, Freud believed that once conscious but has been actively repressed, driving from consciousness because it was too anxiety provoking. Now, there may be so many things in the unconscious mind which you are not aware. Some thoughts came, we are just not aware it came, but it provoked anxiety in me, it created fear in me, it created unpleasant in me, just feeling of the unpleasantness. So, I do not want to remember, that is in the unconscious memory. My son got job, I am very happy. Unfortunately, in the second COVID, I lost my elder son. That was a very terrible, very unpleasant moment in my life. Now, when you just recall that event, I said, no, I don't want to bring on my conscious level, because that disturbs my whole life, my whole emotion. So, that is in my unconscious mind. So, these things are in I am repressing those things, they are in my unconscious mind. So, that means if I give you a summary of these 3, I say conscious mind is where you keep the experiences which are present in your life. So, I usually say, just to make the concept clear, that conscious mind is the drawing room of your house. In drawing room, you keep the the beautiful sceneries, flower pots, beautiful things. That is your memorable conscious mind. Preconscious or subconscious mind, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. If I am putting some effort, it will come to the conscious mind, and unconscious mind is the store of your house. In store, what you keep? All the rubbish things, the damaged things, that old newspapers, the old clothes you put in the store. Do you want to show your store to anybody? No. If anybody comes to your house, he say, I want to go to the store. You say, no, 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 sir, come to the drawing room. I don't want to show my store, because in that store, you know, there is a rubbish, dirty material is there. Similarly, in my unconscious mind, the material which is unpleasant is lying here. And Freud says sometimes it is related with more of the sexual desires also. Clear? So, they create anxiety. So, I repress them, I put in the unconscious mind. But whatever is your unconscious mind, that is with you. That is with you. Unless and until these problems are resolved, whenever they will come in the mind, they will create trouble in my personality and a psychopathology will be produced. So, bringing unconscious material into conscious material and resolving the problems is psychoanalysis. It is nothing. How you bring? There are different techniques. You bringing unconscious material to the conscious material. Once you know you have encountered with it, after that is in your body, in your mind, with you. So, resolve it. This technique of treatment is called psychoanalysis. Now, Sigmund Freud, for example, Freud, whatever I explained now, I will give you the material. For example, Freud contended that shameful experience or unacceptable sexual or aggressive urges are often driven deep within the unconscious. Freud believes that this part is hidden one, surfaces only in the symbolic form in dreams and in some of the behavior people engage in without knowing what they have done so. Freud believed that unconscious mind was the most important determining factor of human behavior. As I told you earlier, that is the hidden part, and that has its impact on the conscious. So, it conscious, I am very well aware. I know that it is good, it is bad, I will not do. Good, I will do. Bad, I will not do. But whatever is in my unconscious mind, that has impact on your behavior, on your personality. Freud believed that many of the symptoms experienced by his patient were disguised and indirect reflection of repressed thoughts and desires. This is why one major goal of psychoanalysis, the method of treating psychological disorders devised by Freud, is to bring repressed material back into consciousness. That I have explained in detail just 2 minutes before. So, he says whatever is you, that will have impact on your personality. So, in this we will try to bring your repressed material, we will make encounter with that, and by making encounter we will try to resolve those problems. So, this was about the layers of the mind: conscious, subconscious, preconscious and the unconscious. Then Freud says structure of the personality. Freud believed, based on observation of his patients, that personality itself could be divided into 3 parts, each existing at one or more level conscious experience. The way these 3 parts of personality develop and interact with one another become the heart of his theory, and this is psychodynamics. The word psychodynamics. He says there are 3 components of the personality. I will talk in detail with example. Freud suggested the personality consists of largely 3 parts: id, ego and superego. Now, these 3 components he talked about: id, ego and superego. Now, what is id we will talk about? I have written in inverted comma id, if it feels good to do it. If it feels good to do it. If it feels good to do it, we are not worried about the consequences. It gives me pleasure, so do it. So, the first and the most primitive part of personality is the id. It is the Latin word that means it. That means it. According to Freud, the id is totally unconscious. This is your unconscious part. It consists of our primitive and innate urges. These include various bodily needs, sexual desires and aggressive impulses. It demands immediate total gratification and not capable of considering the potential cost of seeking the goal. What will be the cost to attain the goal? It is not worried about. That is why it is said that it works on pleasure principle. The pleasure principle can be summed up simply: if it feels good, do it. Now, if a urge has come to you, good or bad, I am not worried about that. He says because you are getting pleasure. So, person tries to attempt that, tries to gratify his need. He is not worried what will be the consequences, what will be the cost I will have to pay. He is not worried about, because it gives him pleasure. So, it does. This is your id. Now, it may be positive, it may be negative. Now, the second part is says ego. The executive, that I have said, what is ego? The executive director. Ego is derived from a Latin word I. I means you. Ego is mostly conscious. It is not unconscious, it is conscious, and is far more rational, logical and cunning than it. It is more logical, it is more rational than cunning. Why I said cunning it? Because it not worried about the cost, not worrying about the consequences. The ego's task is to hold it in check and tell conditions allow for the satisfaction of its impulses. Thus, ego operates in accordance with the reality principle. It takes into account external conditions and consequences of the various actions and directs behavior so as to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. You know what cunning it is forcing you to do? It will tell you the reality. It will tell you that what cost you will have to pay later on. What will be the consequences of fulfilling this need? So, it will check the id. Clear? So, it will check the id. That is why it operates on the reality. It is said that it works on the reality principle. It works on what? Pleasure principle, because you are not worried about the results. So, when I am working on the reality principle, the actuality, then I will minimize the pain and maximize my pleasure. Because if my personality goes on id, then I will execute, but later on I will have to face the pain, because the consequences may be negative. Then the third is superego. Superego is the ego was the director, it is the executive director. I have just given the name. Superego is the executive director. The superego is composed of two words, super and ego. Super means above the ego. Super means above the ego, means I, and meaning there is over the self, which is above yourself is your superego. It too seeks to control satisfaction of id impulses, but in contrast to ego, it is concerned with morality. It is not concerned with consequences, it is concerned with morality. The superego contains the conscience, not conscious, the conscience, the part of the personality that makes people feel guilt or moral anxiety when they do the wrong things. When I do the wrong thing, I am have the feeling of the guilt feeling, then I will have the moral anxiety, I have done immoral thing. Thus, it is said that superego works on the principle of morality. It gives us moral, it gives us the value system. So, this works on the morality, it works on the pleasure, because it is only concerned about the pleasantness. Ego tells us the reality and superego tells us the morality. Now, let me explain with a particular example, so that you may come aware of the concept. I am a teacher. A student is creating, I am very fond of beating. I am just an example, do not take it negatively. I am fond of beating. I am fond of beating. We say that the police is very fond of beating. Until I beat someone, I do not get satisfaction. I said that why you are talking? Why you are talking using mobile in the class? Student says, no sir, I am not using. I said, no, am I telling like, come on. He came to me, I slapped him. When I slapped him, it gave me pleasure. It is my id. I did not think of that he is a university student, what will be the consequence? It was id, but immediately my ego said, sir, Malik sir, what are you doing? What are you doing? You just will slap him, it gives you pleasure, but then the students will go on strike, they will start boycotting your class, they will make complaint to the vice chancellor, and the action may be taken against you. It is a reality. This is the ego. My superego says, they say, when the size of the shoe of the father and the son is the same, they are friend, we should not treat them like the son. At this age, when you are in the university, I can tell you that this is wrong behavior, but I have no right to beat you or to slap you. This who will tell? The culture, the society. So that is why we said it works on the morality principle. Superego, the executive director. The superego is acquired from our parents and through experience and represents our internalization of moral teaching and norms of our society. Generally, such teaching are often quite inflexible and leave little more room for the gratification of our basic desire. They require us to be good all the time. Because of this fact, ego faces another difficult task. It must strike a balance between a primitive urge, that is id, and with our learnt moral constraint, the superego. Freud felt that this constant struggle among id, ego and superego plays a key role in personality and in many psychological disorders. It is, struggle between id says do it, ego says no, reality is this, superego say morality doesn't permit it. So we have to maintain the balance, the psychodynamic. Clear? So that is why this concept was called as the psychodynamic. Number of studies proved. I have done, my students have done number of researches on this. It has been found that those persons who are pathological, who have pathological behavior, criminal, their id was found dominating and ego, superego was weak. Because ego you will learn from the society, superego you will learn from the society. Their social learning was poor, but it was dominated, so they indulged in the immoral behavior or the pathological behavior. So this perspective tells us conscious mind, subconscious mind and unconscious mind, and id, ego, superego, and there are different techniques to understand the unconscious mind. We use the technique free association, dream interpretation, then in free association, transference, counter transference, resistance. This we will talk about when a topic of psychoanalysis therapy will come in our course. So this was all about psychodynamic approach of personality. Thank you very much.